Alright guys, so you bought your Ninja. I'm here to help you get these pieces together. Alright, I appreciate the love and support. Glad you're here. And let's show you how to get these together so you can get that truck running. So we have our T-case, and this is our skid here. So I'm going to show you how to build it first, okay? And then we'll move on to the transmission. So for the T-case, in your kit, you're going to have this one here. It'll have 3 outputs, plus the bearings and your standoffs and everything. And then you're going to have your axial gears here. We're going to need those. Won't need this hardware pack. You're going to need your 2 carbon plates, like this. And the skid, which I left over here. There we go. And then you're going to need, obviously, your skid. So, what I always start with is I get everything laid out so you can see what's going on. So let's go ahead and open up our gears. Now this gear set does come with the smaller gear that we don't use. So that's just a little added bonus for you. So this gear is not used, the little tiny one. We can set it off to the side. We've got our 2 identical gears, same size, same tooth, and then the one larger. So those are going to be the ones we use. And then we have our hardware bag here. So pour it out slowly so everything doesn't go everywhere. We've got our 3 chromoly hardened outputs, which are killer, by the way. We've got our 2 standoffs. We have, or should have, which we do, our 6 flanged bearings. Oh, I just dropped one. Look at that. So then we have our 6 flanged bearings situated here. Got our 2 longer bolts for the bottom of the skid. Alright. We've got our 2 nuts for the bottom of the skid. 3 pins for all the gears. And then our screws for the T-case to put the carbon pieces together. Alright. So I initially always start with the carbon plates. So when you look at them, you can notice these 2 are close together with the small edge here, and then you have a larger side. So the 2 standard same size gears, the 1 larger gear. Okay, and what you have to look at when you build your T-case, so this is going to be the front and the back. So the rear output is the slower, the 26% underdrive. So that's going to face the rear. Your 2 other outputs are going to face forward. So it would be mounted in the truck like you can see here, hopefully a little bit. Yep, just like this. Okay. So what you always want to look at, since we have flanged bearings, you start with one side. You know, this is our larger gear side, so that's going to be towards the rear. I typically will have something like this if we need to round the holes or just give a little cleanup on the edge. Nothing crazy, just each side. You don't have to worry about taking it out. A little bit of carbon dust is never good to breathe, but we didn't make that much, so we'll be okay. So you want these bearings to be able to press in by hand. You don't want to get a hammer out. You don't want to beat them into place, anything like that. See how that went in? That was a very tight fit. So you want all of them to be just like that. You can see it get started, and then that little snap snaps in there. Okay? Let's do this one here. Perfect. A little snap in. Now this is where you want to look at your other piece. So we know the flanges are going to be inside, or you guys don't know, but I just told you. The flanges are going to be inside, so the bearing can't go anywhere. We need to make sure the flanges are facing the inside on this one when they're built. Okay? So larger side here, we want to make sure that's on the inside. We'll do the same thing Just touch them up, and you might not even have to do this, but I just usually do it. It typically makes it a little easier in case one of the edges is a real sharp, straight edge, just to clean it up. Like I said, it barely puts anything out. There we go. So again, hold them up, make sure the large gear, we know we need the flange on this side, so flip it. That way you know you're going on the correct side. There we go. That's in. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. So now we know we've got these correct, because this is going to go together just like this. Alright, so our next step for this, you're going to start with your outputs. So when you look at your outputs, this is going to be your dry shaft side. The less material towards the hole, your dry shaft side, obviously. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. Try to get it in a little closer if the camera will focus on it. Come on, camera. Maybe not. Sorry. There we go. So, smaller side. Oh, it went away. Oh, I don't know what's going on with the camera here. Come on, camera. There we go. Smaller side. And then you got obviously your more material on this side. So dry shaft side, gear side, okay? So let's go back down. So the way I always start it with, we know our outputs are coming this side here for the front. So I always go pin like this, and then gear. Now these are the smaller, this is the smaller one. And then just like that, let it sit. Lean it up like that. Same way, do the same thing for our second one. Pin, gear, same thing, and the bearing, line the teeth up. Perfect. Let it sit. Now this one's obviously going to go towards the rear. So pin side for the gear, or gear side, just like that. Make sure we keep it good. Just like that. Keep pressure on it because it'll kind of want to slide off. Boom. Now, flange is inside. Large gear, obviously. There we go. Our T-case is pretty much assembled. So now, got everything. Everything looks like it's meshing together perfectly. You'll look, there's a little bit of excess off of the outputs on each side. Now these will have a little bit of play, but that's just in its nature. So next, we're going to do our standoffs. Lay your standoff in there. Squeeze it a little bit to put pressure on it. Now I'll typically, well, let me set this down real quick. There we go. I typically like to Loctite all my stuff. So I usually take like the scrap bag from the gears, put a little bit in there, so we know we're going to use it for the transmission also. So screw, just dip it in. You don't need a whole lot, especially with this tiny hardware. Go ahead and run that in. And you don't obviously have to torque them like crazy. Ooh, a little. Oh, there we go. That's always good. To always have a rag with you no matter what you're doing. So let's try that again. There we go. Let's put it on that side. Perfect. Let's get our other standoff. Let's go ahead and drop it in. Now guys, you don't really have to worry how these standoffs are sitting in there. The gears really won't hit them even at the highest point of the standoff. Try to get that lined up. There we go. Perfect. Put your finger on it. Boom. And the next one. Now I have been using these screws here. You can use any screws you like. If you don't like these screws for some odd reason, I always suggest K&K Hardware for anything and everything you use. Stainless, black oxide. They're a tremendous help to the hobby, and they support everybody. So if you do need hardware, a little shout out to them. K&K Hardware is where you want to go. So we have all of our outputs good, beautifully smooth, ready to go. So now we'll get our transmission, or our skid, sorry, not our transmission. We'll get our skid. So with our skid, you can always notice there's a small side and a large side. Okay, large side to the front, and the reason we do that, it gives you a little bit more clearance for your motor, a little bit more wide offset for those offset axles or portals or anything like that, and then a little bit more movement to the rear. So that's why we bring them in a little bit more narrow. Fish makes a great product. That's why we do nothing but use them. We have zero complaints, and they are tough as nails. So we've got our skid. Now our T-case only has 2 screw holes, and our skid has 3. What that purpose is if you wanted to run the T-case more this way to make some room for some odd reason, we left it as an option for you. So with this, you can put it on your skid there. You could line it up with these 2 holes if you'd like. Me personally, on mine, I like to run my battery over here, little 454S. So I run mine all the way to the outside holes. So it fits perfectly on this side, even with the chassis. Gives me enough room to turn a 450 up on edge up in here, and it's worked out really well so far, so I can't complain. So we take our long screws. Now sometimes these can be tight during the printing process, so once you get them started, you kind of be able to just push them in. They will, there you go right in. Now these are a little bit longer than probably needed, but with a T-case, I wanted to make sure there was enough threads there for everything with the lock nut. So even if it did come loose, it still really has to back itself out. We've not had that problem yet or experienced that problem, but with anything that we do, we like to make sure that that problem, if it does happen, is not something that's going to take you out right away. You know, you'll be able to notice it before it ever really fully backs out from itself. So rear output, obviously to the rear, it's going to look crazy sitting like this. It's going to look crazy angled. That's because when it's in the chassis, it levels itself out. So bolts through, nuts on the back side. I typically get them on a pair of little pliers here. Well, nothing ever works when it's on camera, so bear with me. It's my first time. There we go. Get them started. Now if you've got like a little wrench or anything like that, you can use it. We sell them. I have them. It's sitting in the bag behind me. So we're just going to use the pliers for right now. So let's go ahead and, well, if I can hold it good enough to run it, we'll be okay. It's always tougher on camera. Let's see. Let's spin hands like we normally do. Should have got the wrench out, but we'll make do. And if, well, maybe we won't. Let me grab a wrench. There we go. All right. So, little wrench here. Let's get this together and move on. There we go. That's tight. Hope everybody's having a good day. You got your Ninja, so we are going to say that you're having an awesome day. There's not a whole lot of them yet in existence, so if you are on the first 50 release right now, you are the ones. Well, wow, we are having problems today. Trying to get this. Well, I guess that's the problem with a longer bolt also, but like I said, I want to make sure that if any problems ever happened, that it really, really has to back itself out before it ruins your comp day, before it ruins your trail run, anything. Alright, those are both super tight, good, and you guys can see we still have a very, very good gear mesh, smooth rolling, ready to go. So there is your T-case. You guys can see it. Hopefully the camera will focus here for us. Maybe not. There we go. But there is your T-case. So now we've got that, we can set it off to the side along with the other one I've got sitting here. And then we can move our work to the transmission. So the two parts for your transmission that you're going to see here. Huh. That's weird. I didn't cut a slot in this one. Give me just a second. All right. So let's move on to the transmission. So we've got our two parts here for the transmission. That one. We've got the motor plate / transmission plate, and then the outside motor transmission plate. Now, when you look at these, you can notice that these line up just like so. Okay, and then our transmission is built just like that. All right, you can see here, pretty smooth, good to go. No issues. It's a very smooth transmission also. But we're going to get you through on how to build this, where to put the shims, how to do the outputs, and such. So, the same thing I always do, just kind of nip these really quick, clean the edges up. Hopefully, that was the big issue when cutting these, is the tolerances. You want the bearings to be super tight, but not too tight to where it makes the mesh bad. So we've got our two plates. We'll set those up there. And then let's pour out our hardware here so you can see what we've got. We've got, which it'll be kind of more crude terms or lane turns here. We've got a shinier gear and a darker gear. Now, we've come in different batches between making these, so some of them have been completely black, some of them have been a shade darker than this, but still shiny. But we've got, in this case, in this hardware pack, black gear, lighter gear, and then we have the small gear set, or the little small gear. One output of our chrome holly, the same exact output that's in the T-case. We've got our 3 standoffs right there. We've got 2 pins right there. I believe these are 10 millimeter and the ones in the T-case are 8 millimeter. In case anybody want to know, 2.5 millimeter, or yeah, 2.5 millimeter thick pins also. So we're not breaking them, hopefully. And then we've got shims. We've got 2 different assortments. We've got 2 half millimeter shims, and we're going to have 4 2mm shims, okay? Now there might be more, there might be less, hopefully no less, but there might be more in there because they are hard to count and put in bags. So they do stick together. Then we have 2 longer screws. If I remember correctly, they're 10mm. We have 2 shorter 8mm screws, or 6. That's a lot of trying to remember. 1 sleeve spacer that comes with the gears. 1 longer screw here, and then 4 bearings. That's all we need for our transmission. Now, let me get a little drink here. Let's go ahead and start looking at the transmission. Since you don't have one, unfortunately, we're going to go ahead and take a look. So we know our transmission needs to be built like this. So the transmission, when you look at it, you would look at it and say, okay, this is how it's built. This is exactly how it's built. But when it's mounted in the truck, it's actually mounted upside down like this. Okay? So it's very hard to try to look at it like this, but that's not a big deal. We'll build it just how we see here. We've got, this is how our plate goes. All right, so we know our flanges need to be on the inside, the same way with the T-case. So we've got it. Let's flip it over. And these need to be the same. These might need a little work here on this one, a little more than what I had done with the T-case. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes when we cut these get a little bit tighter tolerance, or a little bit, a little bit off when we cut. So let me give that a little more sanding there. Hopefully it didn't need a whole lot. There we go. No, these are very tight. Probably should do the other one a little bit more than that. Let me pop that back out. There we go. So, just a little bit more. Like I said, sometimes the tolerance is just off a hair. Like I said, we keep them to a very tight tolerance. And most of the time it really doesn't need much. Let's make sure we're doing it on the right side. That way, if they get in there, they're not stuck and can't get them back out. Because sometimes they do press in pretty good. But you can see, you need to be able to do that by hand. Okay, so that's completely flush. Let's try this one. Very tight. That one probably needs a little bit more sanding. Yeah, let's do a little bit more on that if we can get that out. There we go. Let me get a little bit more on there. Like I said, hopefully this won't be an issue for anybody. We don't typically try to make them that tight. This cut might have just been towards the end of the sheet, and the bit might have been getting a little smaller. There we go, perfect. It's really not, like I said, you don't have to chuck it in the drill and sand at it for 20 minutes. It's just grab some sandpaper if you need some, if it's not pressing in there super good. Like I say, you don't want it loose though. You don't want it to be able to come out like that. And then let's try this one. So our transmission goes like this in the truck. We know we need to match these angles up, which that was upside down, see? So let's match these angles up. You guys can see that's how it's going to go. It'll be in this. You guys can kind of get an idea like that. And then this would go this way. So this one's done. If you're looking to put the flanges on the same side. So just like this. Plate matches. You can see the holes match up. We know the flanges need to go on this side. Flip it over. Let's see how this one feels. This one don't look too terribly bad. Sometimes just line it up correctly. Let's give them just a little bit. A little sand there. A little sand. Okay. I said, sometimes they just have a little bit of a hard edge still left on the carbon from cutting. Snapped in there good. It's not coming out. Flanges are lined up to each other, just like that. Okay. So, and guys, if you look, there'll be like a little bit of grease coming out of the bearings. You know, they're packed. They're packed and then sealed. So they'll have a little grease come out. No big issue. Can always wipe them off, just like I did right there. So, when we look at our transmission here, we know that this is going to be the output side. It's like that. Like I said, the truck, it's mounted in the truck this way. So our output side's here. So we know flange is inside. We have our output gear, the same as the T-case. Less material, dry shaft side, more material, gear side, okay? So when we have this, we're gonna go pin in here, just like that. Now when I look at this, we know this gear is the darker gear. See, this is from an older setup. It's darker and lighter, okay? The darker gear, or the black gear in this instance, is going on the output, okay? So just like that. So it's the same way. Output will be coming out. Every now and then, you know, I'll have to reference what I'm looking at because, I mean, that's just the way it goes. So, output side, just like that. Good to go. Now, when you look at this gear, I'm going to try, because you can put this gear on a couple different ways. I'm going to try to help you guys here. Now, you can see when I put that on there, that side's actually a little bit longer. The gear needs to go on the inside, okay? So, output shaft like this, pin, like that. Oh, that's not right. No, we had it right the first time. No, that's right. Geez, sorry. Wow. And then, so let me go back so no one's confused. Output, pin, and then we've got the slot and the gear, the darker gear. Just like that. And then that, it's going to go just like this, okay? And the reason for that is, you can see a little lip right here on the gear. And the inside, I know you guys probably, it's hard to see, there's a little lip right there on the inside. And that's what's going to keep it off our bearing, or keep it lined up where we need it to be for the next gear, okay? And speaking of, this is our next gear, our small little guy here. The smaller side without the pinhole is next. So that will line up with our gear here. Line the teeth up. There we go. Drop it in. That's a beautiful mesh between the two. All right, so now we're good there. What we need to do next is we're going to start with our shims for the this side here. Okay, so when you look at this, this is kind of, we get here, this is how we're working on it, okay? This side is going to have the sleeve on it. So when you have your transmission, just like this is your motor hole here. So 1/2 millimeter shim is going to go on first, and then a 0.2 millimeter shim second. Our sleeve here goes on, and then we have to come over to this side because the gear needs to go on. So here's our pin right here like that into our small shaft. Our second gear is going to go right on. Just, let's have a little burr in there. No biggie. We'll line that pin up. If I can get it lined up here. Oh, come on. Must be a little spur inside the gear here. Hold on here. Usually they're pretty simple. There we go. So, got the next gear going on. Make sure the pin is lined up in its spot. There we go. Drop it down. Hold on here. Oh, the sides come out. I was like, I knew something was wrong. There we go. Push this pin in. Make sure that's down. The output's down. In its spot. Make sure that's down. There we go. So make sure everything's down and flush with each other. Sleeve on there. And we're going to go another 1/2 mil here. 0.2 again. And then 0.2 on this one. So we leave this just because sometimes there's a little bit of variance in the carbon, or possibly a pin, or how the gear set is on there, how it was machined. There's always a little bit of difference, okay? So we give you another 0.2 to help with that. If it needs to be less, that's great. If it needs to be that, and put it on there somewhere to feel a little bit better, it's there for you to use. So once we've got that all together, you guys can see here's our transmission. Nothing's touching. This gear is literally in the center of the small gear, and this is in the center of the sleeve and spacers that we have in there. Okay, so just to reiterate, 1/2 mil, 0.2, the sleeve, 1/2 mil, 0.2 on this side, and then a 0.2 on this side, or on this output. Okay, and then that's typically how I do mine. Let's put the other half together on there. You guys can see everything's together just like it should be. Make sure everything's pressed down. Perfect. Might feel a little stiff. Typically does if you've got it pressed pretty good by hand until you put the standoffs and everything in. That's typically how it feels. Now, if it feels too stiff, if something's not fitting correctly, you can always rewind this video, reference where we're going, or, like I said, there's variations. Sometimes the carbon's thicker in this spot or that spot. Take that 0.2 out, or, you can move those shims around. But for most of the time, how I just explained to do it has always worked pretty well for us. But sometimes there always is that little bit of change. So, but back to this. Output side is the side that the brace will go to help you put it in the truck. Now your brace, there's no way you'll be able to see it, but it sits up in there. It has its shock hoop, or in the shock hoop section, it has its little notches in the chassis. And then what I want to try to show you here, make sure I remember correctly. So towards the motor side, if you look at your brace, you have more material here, less material here, okay? That is going to go towards your motor side. So if this is mounted in the truck, let me show you here. Hopefully you guys will be able to see what I'm talking about. So it mounts in the truck just like this, okay? Motor side up, output side out, okay? So this is how it'll mount. The more material side will be like this. So put your points down so it'll sit just in the truck just like this. Now the side that you're wanting the brace for, I'll run you a little thread locker. It goes through into that standoff, okay? This is just going to make it easier for you when you go to put it all in the truck. And what's nice is eventually we're going to try to get this all to be able to be sold separately. So if you ever have an occasion where something happens with the transmission or whatever, you might have an extra transmission just kind of sitting there in your parts box, ready to go for that competition. It's kind of race car-ish. You got another whole motor sitting there, so you'll have another whole transmission sitting there, or another T-case, or whatever. So this will sit in the truck just like you see here, just like that. More material side allows you to push the motor all the way up over here, or allows you to bring it this way if you need more clearance. Either way, okay? So we'll leave those a little loose. They're only in there, you know, just a little bit, just to hold each other. Just like that for right now. And then we'll get the smaller screws on the opposite side here. Just like that. And here's the other one. Got a little thread locker on it. On there, just like that. You can go ahead and snug that down. Not crazy tight. Remember, its thread locker's already on there. They only need to be a little tight. They don't need to be anything crazy. And then, see those are tightened up there. And then this is a little different compared to the rest. So this side we have the standoff goes in just like this here. Now this screw is going to go all the way through the standoff, and then this will act as the lower motor screw. Okay, now what we did here, obviously the hole is big enough that it does not grab any tension with the carbon when it goes through both holes. So that screw you can see spins just like that. So this is what's going to be your lower motor hole screw, and you'll be able to adjust that when you need to break it loose, if you need to adjust your gear mesh or anything like that. And then your top ones here, once it's in the truck, you've got it spaced to where you need it to be. You can tighten those down, both sides. But there is your transmission. You guys can see it's very smooth, very crisp, no issues at all. They're going to have a little, you know, that's just gear play. That's just what it is. That's between the pin and the shaft and everything like that. Everything fits very tight. There's just going to have that little bit of a play in there, which is good. You know, you got a little bit of a rock when it comes to gear mesh anyway. Proper gear mesh. So there we go. There is your transmission for your Ninja. You guys can see there, it's all made the exact same way. So that's your transmission and brace. This was your T-case, and now you are completely ready to start installing these into your Ninja. Okay, guys? You know, your deluxe shafts, we're going to try and make a video on how to do those, but you can see this will be how it sits, just like this in the truck, just like so. That'll sit there, and then your T-case will sit all the way on this side, just like that. Alright guys, if you have any questions, shoot me a message, ask one of the team drivers, post it on the fan page. It's exactly what that's for, to make sure everybody has access to information or what they need when they need it. But thank you so much for watching. We're going to keep making these videos to help everybody out. As you guys can see, this is my Ninja. I absolutely love it. It's one of the best trucks I've ever drove, planted wise and comfortability, I guess you could say wise. I'm just comfortable with the truck. And it's still very new to me. So the more I drive it, the better we'll get. But if you got any questions, get with us. Thank you all so much for your purchase. Thank you for spending a little time with me. And can't wait to see what you guys build with them. But until then, we'll see you guys a little later.